G'day everybody, Max right here, and today I want to talk a little bit about bailouts. So we've already seen plenty of bailouts over the last few months, but we're going to see a lot more over the next 12 to 18 months. And I want to explain and give you guys the tools to understand why these are so horrific. What they do is they punish the poor and they hurt the rich. And I'm going to demonstrate that for you right here. And I want to give you guys the tools to explain to other people that why this is the case and why we should resist these bailouts. So let's talk about this. So let's talk about recently there was headlines all over the place that Carnival Cruises got bailed out. It actually wasn't true, but that's what the headlines read. I actually fell for it for a little bit. Got me some fake news. Bought a headline and thought it was true, but it's not actually what happened. But let's just take it as an example because it may happen in the future. So this works true for anything else. So you have, let's get the players involved. There is a bank. There is a cruise company. This is a cruise ship, believe it or not. Who else is there? That's all there is at the moment. Now then we have to talk about the people because there's no such thing. My black's not working. It always comes down to people. Always reduce everything to the people. So let's do that. So we have let's call them bank shareholders. BS, I kind of like that. That's fun. We have employees of the bank. We have employees of the cruise company. We have the shareholders, so cruise shareholders. And we have, we're going to call them C, they're the consumers. There's the customers of the cruise industry. There's the taxpayers, customers and taxpayers. I'm going to put them in the same category, although they could be slightly different. So the consumers and the taxpayers who are funding the bailout all come from the same pool. So there's 5 groups of people that we're talking about. Bank shareholders, employees of the bank, citizens, consumers and taxpayers, employees of the cruise liner, and shareholders of the cruise company. Let's go through the example of if it was to go bankrupt. Let's just say there is no bailout, and there is. But actually, no. Before we do that, okay, let's take a look at these 5 categories of people. Which ones do you think are the wealthiest, and which ones do you think are the poorest out of all of these groups of people? So we've got. You tell me if you agree or disagree, but let me know in the comments below. But I would suggest that the bank shareholders, although it's publicly listed and anyone can own shares in a bank, a lot of this is held by the wealthiest people in the world and in different ways, not on the share market, and all kinds of crazy things. So I would argue that the bank shareholders are the richest people. I would say the shareholders of the cruise line are probably the second richest people out of these 5 people. These people, both of these groups of people, have money to invest in companies, speculative investment. They have spare cash. We have employees of the bank. I would say employees of the bank, employees of the cruise line. They both have their CEOs. They both have their minimum wage employees. I'm going to say it's pretty similar. If anything, the banks kind of just beat them out a little bit, maybe. And then I would say the consumer and taxpayer, the middle class person going on a cruise, this is probably the poorest of the 5 different categories. Okay? Something like that. But certainly, if we were split into just 2 categories, the 2 shareholder groups with disposable income for investing, these guys are at the top shelf, and then these 3 guys would be the next level down at least. That's a clear distinction, I would imagine. Okay, so there are our 5 players, and we've ranked them from who's rich to who's poor. Okay, now let's go to the instance of what if there is, let's do it first. We'll do not a bailout. There is no bailout. There's no bailout. No, actually, let's flip it. Let's do there is a bailout. Okay, so this company goes broke. The coronavirus hits, for example, demand collapses. These guys, why are they going broke? Okay, they've got huge expenses. Number one, this boat costs like $500 million or $1 billion. Some of them cost $1 billion, okay? So they went to the bank and they borrowed $1 billion. Okay, these guys borrowed $1 billion and they have to pay back, I'm just going to make up a number here, whatever, let's call it 10%. They have to pay back $100 million every single year in interest payments on this boat. Now, in selling to the consumers, well, let's make up some other numbers here. Again, $100 million to the bank, okay. Let's say they have another $50 million in wages, right? Wages that would go to the employees of the cruise line. Every year there's a $50 million payroll, $100 million back to the bank to pay them back. But from the consumers, they get, let's just say there's a 20% margin there. So there's $100 million that go to the bank in interest payments, $50 million go to the employees, and there's a $20 million profit, which would of course go to the shareholders of the cruise line. Okay, so let's put these numbers where they belong. It's 20 million to the shareholders, 50 million to the employees, and $100 million per year to the bank. Okay, that's what is currently happening. Demand collapses, and this $170 million that went in this direction from the consumer to there collapses, and whatever, goes down to somewhere around $50 million. Doesn't matter. All right, and these guys are hemorrhaging money like crazy. They no longer can pay their bills. So they can, first people that get hurt, shareholders, profit disappears. Okay. Next people that get hurt, which one of these happens next? Probably they've got to lay off some staff. Plenty of these people go, but primarily the banks. The banks can no longer get their interest repayments of $100 million per year, and their $1 billion loan is looking very, very shaky. All right. So under these circumstances, who are the people? Where the bank, this $100 million was not paid, so we got to the bank. The bank is short of money. Maybe the bank needs to fire some staff, maybe, but primarily the bank is less profitable, and the people that hurt are the shareholders of the bank. So if we do not bail out these guys, the people that hurt the most are these guys. Well, I don't know why I circled out there. The shareholders of the bank, their profits collapsed. They made a risky investment. They had the money to invest. They were the richest people to start. They stopped getting their interest payments. They're going to have to write down their loan. Okay? The shareholders of the cruise liner, again, they're the second richest people in this equation. They have money to invest. They took a risky investment for the purpose of making a return. This particular one went south. They probably have other ones that are going well. And these guys are the ones that get hurt without a bail-in. Now, but we could say that this thing gets broke and all of these people get fired, and all of these people get fired, and all of these consumers no longer can go on cruises. So the argument for a bailout is everybody hurts, but especially these people get hurt the most, because these people's income went from a lot to zero. Maybe these people the bank went under, and maybe the employees of the bank went to zero. All this kind of stuff. However, this isn't true, because what would happen in this situation? It's very simple to understand. If you're a bank and you have $1 billion lien on this boat, right? And these guys cannot do it. You now own a boat. What are you going to do with a boat? You're a bank. Do you know how to run a boat? The answer is no. You don't know how to run a boat, and you make loans on lots of different things, and you can't be a master of all of them. So what you would do is you jump in here and you put this company into receivership, because you've got two options. You can say, okay, you're bankrupt, fire all your staff, and there's this big hunking float a hunk of metal floating in the ocean. And as a bank, you've got to sell that and try and get the most amount of money to get your $1 billion back. You might be able to sell this hunk of metal for $100 million, and so you've lost $900 million. You have another option. You put the company into receivership, meaning the entrepreneurs here, the management staff were incompetent, or even if let's just say they're incompetent for right now. They're incompetent. We're going to replace them with new people, and they're going to run the business as best they can. They might need to fire some staff. They might need to reduce some prices because it's Corona times. They might need to do some things, but we have an operable business. And once it's in receivership, you say, okay, now I don't want to I'm a bank. I don't want to run this business, right? What I want to do is I want to sell it. So now it just goes on. It goes up for auction, and this whole working business goes up for auction, and someone comes in and buys it. Not as a hunk of metal, and they've got to go and build a whole business around it. They take over an operating business that has some cash flow, right? It's got everything there in place. It's got marketing, it's got branding, it's got employees, it's got trained staff, it's got all the things it's got. It's a business. It's just revenue collapsed below how much their interest payments and their costs were. So now let's just say it went down by half. In the instance of Corona, it went down by 100% for a few months, but let's just say typically it goes down by half. Okay. So instead of $150 million in annual revenue coming through, let's say it goes down to 75 million in revenue. And these people come along, an entrepreneur comes along and says, well, I could probably pay you $300 or $400 million bank for this business that you've just taken ownership of. You took ownership of it. These guys couldn't pay. They declared bankruptcy. All the assets of the business became the assets of the bank. The banker saying, I want to sell it. So what do? If I only pay you $500 million instead of $1 billion, let's see if that works out, stands to reason my interest payments will go down to 50. No, let's go down further. Let's say I can only pay you 200 million, right? If I only pay you 200 million for this business instead of 1 billion, instead of paying $100 million in interest, I'm actually only going to have to pay you 1/5 of the loan, 1/5 of the interest. So I can actually only have to be paying you $20 million. $20 million instead of $100 million. I'll probably fire some staff. Let's say I'm going to fire another $20 million worth of payroll. So that goes down to 30. I've got $30 million in staffing costs, and I want $20 million of profit, or else this isn't worth it for me. Well, hang on, let's just work out how much profit there is. So I've got $30 million in staffing costs. I've got $20 million in interest payments now. All of a sudden, $75 million in revenue coming into the finger makes this business profitable. And so an entrepreneur will come in here and bid for this whole business on auction from this guy, and they will take over the business, and it will be a profitable business from the get-go and start running. Who lost money in that scenario? The bank. Their loan got written down from $1 billion to $800 million. These shareholders, they got kicked out, they're gone. New shareholders, new entrepreneurs come in, take over an operable business. The vast majority of these employees still running. Maybe they had to fire a few employees at the bank to compensate for these losses, but certainly the shareholders of the bank were the big losers, right? These guys, but the big winners now are the consumers and the taxpayers. The taxpayers have contributed nothing yet. They didn't bail them out in this scenario. So there's zero cost on the consumers, the poorest people of all of this. And as a consumer, now the cost base of this thing is, you know what? This company could now probably drop their prices for the cruises and just offer more places. So more people would be able to afford to go on cruises. So actually, the consumers, the broadest group of people, the ones who are considered the poorest in all these people, they get the benefit out of this bankruptcy. These guys win, and it's the most number of people. The richest people, the most concentrated wealth, the most concentrated group of people, the smallest number of people, these guys lose, and the broadest number of people and the poorest people, they win. That's what happens when you don't do a bailout. Okay, let's see what happens when you do the bailout. Again, we got the bank. We got the ship, the cruise line company. We have the bank shareholders, employees of the bank, citizens. We have employees of the cruise and the cruise shareholders. Okay. What happens if you do a bailout? Very simple. These guys get robbed blind. They get as much money as what the bailout is. These guys can't make a payment right now for whatever period. These guys, we come and steal money from these guys to give to the cruise company so that these guys still make their profit. These guys still get their interest payments. The shareholders kick ass. Maybe there's some employees that may have lost their jobs, didn't lose their jobs. The shareholders of these guys kick ass. They're still profitable. Their management, the employees, their upper CEO, these guys crush it. You look at all the bailouts that happened in 2008, all the CEOs crushed it. They went and got billions of dollars from the government. Their share price went up. They got massive bonuses, right? The richest people in all of these categories win, and the poorest, most broadest category of people lose when you do a bailout. This is a transfer of wealth from the poorest to the richest. That is what bailouts are. It is what they always are. It happens every single time. We have to resist bailouts. Let it collapse. Liquidate the debt. That's the process of when the bank takes the company into receivership and just sells it on the open market in an auction. Someone comes and buys it for much less. They owe much less to the bank. They can afford the interest repayments at the new market level, and the biggest group of people wins across the board. We have to resist the bailouts. Now, that is very, very simple and easy and elegant to understand, I think, for everybody with regards to one-off bailouts, one-off industries. There was Chrysler a few decades ago and Ford and whatever else. Okay. But what about the banks? Banking is a special kind of animal in our entire system revolves around the banks, right? You have a banking crisis, then you got a serious problem. So now the argument is, well, if we don't bail out the cruise liners to save the banks, at least now during this part of the argument, they're being honest. What they're saving is the banks. They're saving the bank shareholders. This is what they're saving. But during a pandemic, like with whatever's going on right now, I know I've said it several times, so I just didn't want to say it again. They're honest in this part. These are the people they're saving. They're saving the banks. And they say, we need to save the banks to save all of these people. But what happens in 2008, happens in 2000, happens in the 90s. They're always stealing from the poorest to give to the richest, and you get to a point where it's too big to fail. And I agree. The carnage, the pain, the misery, the suffering that will happen if there's wide-scale bank failure is just going to be horrific. It's going to be really, really bad for society. It's going to be poverty-inducing. Everyone's going to lose. The amount of wealth lost down here is going to be tremendous. The thing that you have to realize is that the crime has been done. It's been going on for decades. These people are trained to do very, very risky things, take the profits when it works, stick the bill to these guys when it doesn't work, right? Nothing will change until it's changed. It sounds obvious, but this is going to keep going and keep getting worse until the system breaks. I'll talk about the breaking system in just a minute. But people are saying, well, we have to do this or else the pain and misery of the banking system collapsing will be too great. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm addicted to heroin now, so I got to just keep taking it. The crime has been done. The bailouts have been going on for decades. The CEOs of these companies all know and all expect the government to come and save them, and their behavior is set. The crime is done. We have to do the time. We as a society allowed it. You're not innocent. You may have been fighting it the whole time, but it doesn't matter. We as a society, we must pay the price. The price of all of this, the price of allowing government intervention, the price of allowing a central bank, period, since 1913, the price of allowing the government to go off the gold standard in 1971, the price of all of these things is coming due. And there is no out. You have to pay the price. The only way to get off the heroin, once you've made the horrible mistake of getting addicted to it, is to go through the withdrawals. And there is no way out. It is miserable. It is painful. It is going to suck really, really hard. But there's no way out of it because you've done it. You've done it. It's done. You've got yourself addicted. Now, this question is, do you keep addicting yourself? Do you keep destroying society? Or do you go through the brutality, the misery, the suffering of the withdrawals? And then you can start anew and live a healthy life. They're your options. We cannot avoid the pain. We need to stop trying. We need to take our medicine and just move on. Take our medicine. It's going to hurt for a few years. Go back to free markets. Get the government out of get the government, this principle that the government is supposed to save us, this mentality that you hear on the news every single day. Coronavirus isn't anyone's fault. It's not their fault the coronavirus coming on. We have to bail out this business. We have to bail out that business. We have to bail out these people. Completely false. You have to, it is, by the way, they're not completely innocent. It is their fault. They should have saved for a rainy day. I have enormous sympathy for them. They were encouraged not to save because savers were punished because the government keeps printing money, keeps bailing out risky speculators when their speculations go south. They keep taking money from savers and giving it to them. I understand there's zero interest rates. Why would you save? I have enormous sympathy for them, but they're not innocent. We have all played a part in this. We have all allowed it, and we have to take our medicine. If we do not take our medicine, what happens? Money keeps getting stolen from the consumers, to keep going through governments, to keep being redistributed, to keep doing whatever. And you end up with a system where there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to work, save. It's completely destroyed. You end up in this socialist utopia of misery. And what will happen is, by the way the money is stolen, there is no money left to steal. There's no point putting up taxes. There's no point, the savings rate over, I think it's like 60-70% of the nation can't withstand a $1,000 shock. If there's an extra hospital bill or something to the tune of $1,000, they can't afford to pay it. Never in 100 years, this nation has not been so poor in terms of there are no savings. We don't have savings. Right now, we've gone through all the savings. There's nothing left, and now we're stealing the savings of our children and our future selves by printing money. And when you print money to give to these guys, what you are doing is stealing the wealth of your future. And it will collapse with 100% certainty. Fiat currencies collapse every single time. Back in the Great Depression, you could have gone through a depression. You could have not had the New Deal and come out of it after 2 or 3 years. But you got the New Deal, so it lasted 15, 20 years. Okay, but we came out of it without destroying the currency because we didn't have fiat currency. It was a gold-backed currency. Every single time there is a fiat currency, meaning there's nothing back it and there's no restraint on government in their printing, you can with 100% certainty say they are going to print it to oblivion. So as more of these things fail, as more of the incentive to work is disrupted, and we all know people who are saying, I couldn't be bothered going back to work, I'm making more money not working. That's happening right now. So with the incentive of work destroyed, this is just going to play out very, very quickly over the next few years, I believe, and the currency will go into destruction. That might take a little bit longer, 3 to 5 year play out, but that is what's happening, and it's all built on the back of bailout. Once you understand that the disease of the bailout, you got tricked. You got tricked into saying, I am willing to do something immoral, which is steal money from some people to give to these companies too. It's going to work out good, trust me. Once you made that error, you got to take the medicine at some point. And it's time to take the medicine. Or else we're going to go through a hyperinflationary collapse, which is significantly worse than a deflationary collapse like what happened in the Great Depression. Whew, that's some good news to end on. Guys, did you like this content? Let me know in the comments below what kind of videos would you like me to make. I can't wait to hear from it. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, do all the good things, help grow this channel if you like this content. Take care. I'll see you soon.